My brother moved our aging parents into his house, sold our childhood home behind our backs, and then tried to cut me out of the will. I never thought a house could feel like a loaded gun. This is long, but I'll keep it as clear as I can. My parents, we'll call them Mom and Dad, bought the little house on Maple Street when I was 6. It was the place where we had birthdays in the yard, where Dad fixed things and Mom made pancakes in the morning light. When they retired, the house was the thing they were proudest of. My brother, T, and I grew up there. When our parents started having health problems in the last few years, T suggested that they move in with him so he could care for them. He lives 2 towns over in a big new place and framed it as the easy, practical choice. I hesitated. T and I have never been as close as we pretended to be in Christmas photos. He's always been decisive, loud, and slightly performative. But our parents wanted to be with family, and T promised weekly doctor's visits and that he'd handle the paperwork. I agreed to let him do the initial steps because I was juggling work and my own family 40 miles away. Looking back, that's the worst decision I made. 2 months after they moved, T texted me to say Mom and Dad loved it and asked if I could come for dinner the following week. I packed the kids and made the drive. The house felt different. T had rearranged everything in a way that made the living room look like a brochure. New furniture, showy decorations, and photos of his family everywhere. My parents were smiling but tired. Over dessert, T casually mentioned he'd had some paperwork signed to make things easier, and he described it as a power of attorney so he could handle medical decisions. I nodded. He made it sound like common sense. 3 weeks later, the call that woke me at 3 a.m. came from Mom. She was crying and confused. She said she'd just gotten a letter. The house on Maple Street had been sold. She handed the phone to Dad who, after I calmed him, read the notice aloud. The deed had been transferred and a sale completed. Proceeds were directed to a bank account set up in T's name as custodian. I drove over and found Mom pacing the front yard in a bathrobe, holding the sale papers and shaking hands. T's story. He had handled the estate because things were getting complicated. He said our parents signed some papers when they moved in, part of getting Medicaid paperwork in order. He said the sale was to cover care costs and that he had their best interests at heart. He said he'd consulted a lawyer. He said, "You know how slow those things are. This was the only way to make sure they get care." Except Mom and Dad swore they had not agreed to sell Maple Street. They had never discussed selling it. The signatures on the transfer document looked shaky and rushed to me, like someone had signed while confused. The closing statement listed improvements T claimed he'd made and showed an escrow deposit wired to an account with T's name. The whole thing smelled wrong. I called my lawyer and then my parents' old neighbor who has kept tabs on them for years. The neighbor sent me a photo of Mom opening the mail earlier that month. The note I just read. She remembered Mom saying she didn't understand it, but that T handled it. We started pulling every scrap of evidence. The deed, hospital visitor logs. Mom had been to a clinic the week before. She was prescribed medication that made her groggy the day the document was signed, emails, and texts. We also found a notarized document dated the week before the move that gave T limited power of attorney for medical and financial decisions for a period of 3 months. Mom recalled signing it, but said the notary had told her she was signing a registration form for Medicare, not a document that could transfer property. We demanded an explanation from T. He said he'd done them a favor and that the sale was temporary while he sorted things. He said he'd put the money into a custodial account until Mom and Dad were settled. When I pushed about the deed itself and why it listed him as the buyer for value, he became defensive. "You're overreacting. I'm keeping the money safe. The house was a liability." He told me that if I didn't trust his judgment, I could sue, but it would cost them money they don't have. We are not a rich family, but we're not destitute. The sale price was substantial. It could fund excellent in-home care or a comfortable assisted living facility, if handled transparently and in Mom and Dad's best interest. The idea that T could unilaterally sell their home while they were vulnerable felt like theft dressed in family rhetoric. I called the county recorder's office and then a probate attorney. The attorney told me what I feared. If the signatures were authentic and there were no documented cases of coercion, T had a claim, but we could challenge the sale if we proved incapacity, undue influence, or fraud. What followed were weeks of polite messages that grew colder by the day. T claimed he had receipts for repairs and invoices for care. Our parents were embarrassed and ashamed. Some of our extended family took T's side because he was a great storyteller and had convinced them this was the pragmatic choice. A cousin texted me, "He's doing the heavy lifting. Just let it go for their sake." That felt like betrayal. I'm writing this because a lot of people have asked, why didn't we involve the police? Why didn't we lock the doors? It's not that simple. 1, Mom and Dad insisted they were okay and trusted T. 2, family conflict has layers. Legal action felt like burning a bridge we might later need. 3, my parents were embarrassed and confused. They were not clear witnesses to coercion in their minds. It's messy and human. We petitioned the county to temporarily freeze the sale proceeds while we investigated. The bank put a hold on the account pending legal authorization. The probate attorney filed a motion requesting an accounting and an emergency hearing to determine whether the transfer was valid. The judge ordered a temporary freeze and scheduled a hearing in 21 days. T responded by moving to discredit Mom's capacity. He presented a doctor's note saying Mom was low functioning for a few days during her hospital visit and argued she had signed voluntarily. He also produced a notarized affidavit from a witness, a neighbor of his who said Mom said it was okay. The affidavit felt convenient. We dug more. A nurse at the clinic recalled that the notary had been called to the room by T and that Mom looked confused when signing. The nurse had a good memory and volunteered to write a statement. We found an email from T to a property management company discussing repairs the day before the closing, which suggested premeditation. The judge read the emergency filings and extended the freeze. The hearing went into preliminary discovery. The hearings are agonizing. You don't want to fight family in court, but you also want to protect the people you love from being manipulated. The worst days are when someone says something cruel and it's believed because they sound confident. T's confidence has been his armor. Update, 10 days later. Court ordered a full forensic accounting of the proceeds and demanded T produce all receipts and bank statements. T's lawyer supplied some documents, but there were gaps and redactions. Then a new twist. T filed a petition asking the court to be appointed guardian of both parents, arguing that a house sale was necessary to cover immediate care costs and that he needed broader authority. He framed it as doing what was best. That petition triggered a wave of family texts. Some relatives started sending me screenshots of conversations where T painted himself as the only one taking action. Others told me to be quiet. The probate judge set a contested hearing and assigned a guardian ad litem to assess Mom and Dad's capacity and influence. We also found out T had been taking the title insurance policy in his name and had updated the property tax mailing address to his office the week before the sale. That looked like planning, not negligence. The investigator asked us to produce a timeline of events. Who was with Mom the day she signed, who notarized the paperwork, what forms were explained. I sat across from Mom in the kitchen and listened to her try to remember. She said she felt tired that day, medicated, and that T kept telling me it would all be easier. She couldn't recall reading a deed or being told a house was being sold for good. That, more than anything, broke me. The investigator asked Mom gentle questions, and she slowly said, I didn't understand it. I thought it was paperwork for the nurse. Update, 4 weeks later. The guardian ad litem's report leaned in our favor. The investigator wrote that Mom likely lacked the full capacity to understand a property transfer on the day in question, and that the circumstances suggested undue influence. The judge ordered the sale reversed temporarily and instructed the county recorder to investigate the notary's practices. They subpoenaed the notary's records and security camera footage from the clinic reception area. Here's where it gets complicated. T posted an emotional video to a private family group defending himself, saying he saved our parents from chaos, showing a few cleaned up invoices and a portion of the renovation receipts. Some family members believed him again. Others saw the admission that he had lined up contractors before the deed transfer and started to worry. Meanwhile, the bank produced records showing a wire transfer from T's account to a local rehab center for a down payment on a care suite. The ledger matched some of the invoices he claimed. The judge asked for a full accounting of all funds and ordered that no money leave the account pending the resolution. We're still in court. T's lawyer is aggressive. He's arguing we're trying to relitigate Mom's autonomy and that Mom's signature was valid. He's also trying to portray me as litigious and motivated by greed. I've had family members text me that I should think about reconciliation, that what matters is Mom and Dad's comfort. I agree, but comfort built from deceit isn't comfort I can allow. Final update, 3 months later. We reached a settlement of sorts. The court found enough evidence of undue influence and irregularities with the notary to declare the deed transfer void pending a full guardianship assessment. The sale was reversed. The money was returned to an escrow account controlled by the court to be used exclusively for Mom and Dad's documented medical expenses. T was removed as the primary financial custodian. The court appointed a neutral third party to manage the funds and to coordinate care, a court-appointed conservator. The judge also ordered the notary's practices be investigated and recommended a criminal referral if fraud was found. In mediation, T admitted he messed up and apologized, but he stopped short of admitting intentional wrongdoing. He agreed to a monitored schedule of visits and to attend financial management counseling. Several relatives stopped speaking to him. Others kept his side. It's messy. The judge's order gave mom and dad stability, which was the immediate goal, but the family fractures remain. Mom still sits on the porch some afternoons and says she's glad to have Maple Street back in name, even if the house itself has moved into a trust for their care. Dad tells a few good jokes, and we try to give them predictable, peaceful days.